only Sheffield United have fewer. It's nothing new, is it? It's like...
I mean, I gave it a lot of credit last week for their stout defence at Anfield, right? A lot of credit. But we did say, one of the things we discussed last week was, okay, that's acceptable at Liverpool for Man United, but it's not acceptable against, outside of the top four, it's not acceptable against the rest. How will United cope when they have to open up, right? We've seen it against Bournemouth and many, many teams this year, where they've opened up and they've been cut open, going back to the first game of the season against Wolves, where they got away with it. And quite frankly, this was appalling. I mean, I don't know where to start. And we had some youngsters come in, and that's fine. And the youngsters, for me, mistakes or not, are blameless. He had Amrabat on the bench. He had Reggie on the bench. He had others. He had experienced players on the bench. This is a choice for him. Yes, he's got players out, but it's still a choice. They are absolutely abysmal from top to bottom. I mean, there's no other way to get around it. You know, Rasmus Højlund, you have to feel sorry for him in a sense that, yes, he's not got a Premier League goal, but is there any striker feeding on less scraps than him, right? I mean, it's borderline unwatchable. And when Erik ten Hag talks about controlling games, anybody who watches a semblance of the Premier League knows that West Ham United generally give up possession to almost every side. That's what they do. So it is no feather in your cap to get 60% possession against West Ham United. You don't have to work for it. That's what they do. That's the game plan. That's their ploy. Now, they've been criticised for it, David Moyes, quite a lot, right? But that's what they do. So for Erik ten Hag to suggest that it's some sort of accomplishment, as he has, because we controlled the game, well, that's not an argument in this case. So, and what I can't get my head around, we have this Jim Ratcliffe investment that just seems to be never-ending.
Yep.
We have so many outside stories of the Sancho and everything else, and what we're seeing on the park is, quite frankly, it's just unacceptable. I don't know how this manager's head cannot roll. I just don't.
What are they doing in the week in training? What are you seeing? What sort of...
Nothing. Whenever I watch a team, when I watch West Ham, they're working on their team shape, they're working on counter-attack. And by the way, the West Ham front three would walk into the Man United front three. Paquetá, Kudus, Jared Bowen. Tells you where they are. All the teams you watch, you look at Villa, high line, taking risks, little bit of a hybrid. Sometimes they can sit back. They really use Ollie Watkins. They've got a hard-working three in midfield. They like the full-backs to get forward. Tottenham in a similar vein under Ange Postecoglou. Roberto De Zerbi comes in. He stamped his authority on Brighton. You know, we know what Arsenal do. We know what Liverpool do. Newcastle are a bit of an anomaly because they're working with, and they have been for a while, an incredible injury list. And I know Man United have got players out. But almost every one of the bigger teams, there is something, you watch them and go, right, I get it, that's what they're trying. With Man United, we still, to this day, have no idea. They don't squeeze the ball, they don't sit off, they play long balls, they don't try and overplay from the back. I've no idea. I don't, other than there's nobody at Man United can make a decision. So you walk in, you knock in every office, and there's nobody in that office that makes a decision. All around the corner, there's nobody in that office, nobody in that office, nobody in that office. Other than that, I don't know how this manager is going to survive. Because surely this has to be unacceptable from a football perspective.
You mentioned there the injury list. Let's just remind you who they had missing for this tie. When we talk about teams, as you mentioned, Newcastle, they're struggling with injuries, that they seem to get a pass with it. Why don't Manchester United get the same sort of pass as well?
Because Newcastle have had moments of the season where it's been good. You know, beating PSG. You know, I can't remember, beating Aston Villa 5-1. Yeah. Beating Arsenal, knocking Man City out the Carabao Cup. There's been moments in Newcastle's season with the injuries where you've gone, that was a great game of football. You know, going away to Paris Saint-Germain and basically being outdone by a crazy VAR decision on a handball. So there has been big moments against big teams where Newcastle have had some sublime moments, but it's all cut up to them. You tell me what's Man United. You know, whenever they cannot beat anybody that's up the top of the league. They can't. They finished bottom of the Champions League group. They got knocked out of the Carabao Cup by Newcastle's B side. So there's no. Even when everybody listen, even when that list was only 50% of that, or even less, they were still as bad. There's been no good. There's been no that. Do you remember when they went to Bayern Munich and beat Bayern 4-3? No. Do you remember when they went to
Galatasaray? Goals.
No. Do you remember when they went to... No. Do you remember... No. So there's literally been nothing to hang on to.
And that's the thing, isn't it, Gab? There's nothing to hang your hat on. I think there's just a little spark, a little light at the end of the tunnel that maybe we could work on and get this team better.
Yeah, look, while Craig was laying out all his positives, especially that nonsense about, oh, we controlled the game against a team that lets you have the ball, I was trying to, be positive. I have a positive Saturday. It's Christmas, right? And I thought to myself, well, there's Garnacho's overhead kick, right? That was good. And Maguire had a couple decent games. And
wow, Gab. No wonder your dog's barking at you.
It's hard, right?
Yes.
It's hard to get beyond that. And there's a sense of drift. And the worst thing is, Craig mentioned Jim Ratcliffe there. This is dragging on. And with this dragging on means that nobody has any certainty. Erik ten Hag does not have any certainty about whether he's going to stick around. If he does stick around, he's not going to have any certainty about how the club can operate in January, because there's 50 different people who've been linked with John Murtaugh's director of football job. Now looks like it's, well, it doesn't look like, we know it's going to drag on into 2024 once the window's already open. And you feel like that this is going to be a lost season. And I think that makes everybody's job even more difficult and just adds to the frustration. And by the way, with regards to that list you showed of all the injured players who were out, I think what's most frustrating is how many of those guys who are injured now actually played well for Manchester United before getting injured. Other than Lisandro Martinez, I don't think there's too many others. So you can't even really hang your hat on that either.
Frank, what would you like to add, or do you want the dog to speak for you?
She was barking because my wife is coming back home, whatever. But what I want to say is well, first, it was one of the worst game for an hour before the West Ham goal, and I agree with Craig. But I have to say that Manchester United has some chances, and Garnacho's opportunity should have gone in, and gone in, and it would have been maybe a different game. You have some players who maybe we can get out of the criticism, like Garnacho, maybe Luke Shaw as well, who are still keeping the level that they were, being drawn by the others. We all know that Ten Hag lost half of the dressing room, like Rashford, for example, is one example out of maybe 10 players. And you feel that it's already the end of it. I mean, there is a fantastic interview post game about the lady having fun with Ten Hag, poking him, and him saying that we were dominant, we were good, we were better than West Ham. Which goes what Craig explained, that of course, because West Ham doesn't want the ball, so of course you're dominant, but you do nothing. It's over. He lost all credibilities on this conference, press conference time. And I think it's over. It's over. He has to go, and somebody has to come. But how are you going to resolve? I mean, I talk a lot about Chelsea and how impossible I think right now is to solve all the problems. I think for United, it's exactly the same.
There are player problems, there's no doubt. But I tell you what, there's a bunch of other one thing you got to look at as well is to say, look, is he still getting the most out of what he has got? And the answer for me is a categoric no. There's a bunch of other managers, never mind around Europe, right? The Thiago Motta's we talked about with Gab on Friday, and others. There's a bunch of other managers up and coming and experienced in Europe. But even in England alone, there's probably 7 or 8 I think would do a better job at Man United than Erik ten Hag. He's struggling. He is out. It looks to me like last year was an anomaly, and he's out his depth. I mean, goodness me. Even Sean Dyche is getting Everton playing better football than Man United. They were able to go to Tottenham today. Okay, they lost. They went to Tottenham today and they gave Tottenham a going over for a long part of that game. Playing football,
Yeah.
right?
But you know, I'm sorry, guys. I don't know if you were told, because I was told that Graham Potter is maybe linked to Manchester United to become the next coach.
Who told you that,
Where,
Frank?
I mean, he was Huh? What?
Who told you that? The dog?
Well, was told on the French television. That Graham Potter might be the next coach.
He's not going
And
there.
well, you know, it's French television. But I just want to say that if they decided to go for that coach was in the middle of the same problem with Chelsea and couldn't solve anything there. And you want to pick him? I mean, I don't know. Some people in the office, they have to start working, you know, a little bit.
Gab, this is the point, isn't it? Is there anyone actually around who has the power to sack Ten Hag?
Well, yeah, no. Look, the Glazers still own the club, and they will own the majority of the club once Jim Ratcliffe comes in and takes over his chunk of the club. The problem is, with the agreement that they have in place, we're led to believe that, you know, Ratcliffe is going to have much more say than his 25% warrants, and he's going to effectively, you know, run, or his people are going to run most of the football operation. So what you don't want in this situation, you've agreed a price with a man, you have a deal, and then all of a sudden, you know, you sack Ten Hag now, and then you got to pay him his severance, and you have to pay for a new manager to come in, and then at that point, Ratcliffe says, sorry, Glazers, we need to, I don't want to inherit this situation. I want to make my own choices. So I think that's a difficulty. I think there is definitely a scenario where, you know, obviously everybody knows Graham Potter has been mentioned, although most of the names that have been linked thus far have been director of football types. I think he's going to want to take his time with it. Equally, there's the option of, you know, maybe an interim coach and do a proper coaching search between now and the end of the season. However, remember, they did that last time with Ralph Rangnick, and we know how well that worked out. So it's a really difficult one, and I'd be surprised if they make any sort of major decision until Ratcliffe takes over.
Got Villa next. Oof. Who I know had a disappointing result against Sheffield United, but we know they're a good side. Look, it can't continue. I don't care if there's nobody at that football club. This can't continue. The fans, as well. If fans can speak, I mean, it's Manchester United. 4 games without a goal. You know, the record we saw in the graphics is dreadful. The football is terrible. The atmosphere at the club is terrible. Mm-hmm. The manager has not been able to handle this particularly unruly group of players, and they are, you know, and the likes of Jadon Sancho. I don't know the whole story here, but how can he sit back and be comfortable with himself if he's available to play, and there's a lack of an apology, you know, all these scenarios. But I think it all comes down to the fact that it's not just the results, it's the manner in which they're getting beat in the games, and it's embarrassing.
Of course, throughout the day, we bring you digital shows as well. Craig features heavily on them today. Craig, you're all over the place.
Yeah, well, I need to have a word.
Yeah,